knew my wife was lying to me. I just didn't tell her I knew. For weeks, I went through our normal routine, went to work, ate dinner with her, and acted like nothing had changed. But while she thought I was in the dark, I was quietly finding out how much of my marriage had been a lie. The first time I realized something was wrong, I wasn't looking at my wife. I was looking at a picture. Karen had posted it from dinner with some friends. She was sitting at a table with Susan, smiling at the camera. I almost scrolled past it. Then I noticed the man standing near the bar in the background. I knew that jacket. I knew the way he stood. It was Mark, my friend. I stared at that picture for maybe 30 seconds. Then I opened another one. Different restaurant, different night. There he was again. And that's when I started wondering how many times I'd seen the truth without actually seeing it. My name's David. I'm 60 years old. Karen and I had been married 31 years. We had 2 grown kids, 4 grandkids, a house we'd spent most of our marriage paying for, and 2 jobs that weren't especially exciting. I was a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing plant. Karen worked in administration for a healthcare company. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. We had some savings, retirement accounts, and a mortgage that was finally getting small enough to see the end of. For most of our marriage, that was enough. We worked, we paid the bills, we raised our kids, we went to birthdays and family cookouts. Sometimes we argued about money, sometimes about the thermostat. Nothing unusual. A few years earlier, Karen and I had gone through a rough period. Not a divorce kind of rough period, just distant. The kids were gone, we were both busy. Somewhere along the way, we'd gotten into the habit of living around each other instead of with each other. One night, after dinner, we were sitting at the kitchen table. Karen looked at me and said, "Whatever happens, I don't want us lying to each other." I said, "Me neither." She looked straight at me. "I'd never do that to you." I believed her. That's what makes the rest hard to explain. About a year before everything fell apart, Karen started going out more. Thursday dinners, Friday drinks after work, weekend gatherings. She started taking more pictures too. At first I didn't care. Actually, I was glad she was getting out of the house. Then I noticed her phone. She changed the password, started taking it into the bathroom. If a message came in during dinner, she'd look at the screen and turn the phone face down. One night I asked, "Everything okay?" "I'm tired, David." "That's all?" She sighed. "Yeah, I'm just tired." I nodded. Maybe I should have pushed harder. I didn't. Mark had been part of our lives more than a decade. He was divorced, about my age, easygoing, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and know everybody within 10 minutes. I'd trusted him. I'd talked to him about things I didn't talk about with many people. Work, money, my marriage. I remember sitting in his garage one evening while he worked on an old motorcycle. I told him Karen and I had been having problems. He listened. Then he said, "You guys have been together a long time. You'll work it out." I believed him. So when I saw him in that first photograph, I tried to explain it away. Maybe he'd been at the same restaurant. Maybe Susan knew him. Maybe it was some work event. Plenty of innocent explanations. Then I found another picture. Mark again, 3 months earlier. A work gathering Karen had mentioned. Then another. A friend's birthday. Mark. Then another. A dinner Karen had described as a night with Susan. Mark was standing near the back of the room. I started checking the dates. That's when things got uncomfortable. Some of those nights were nights when Karen had told me she was somewhere else. I didn't confront her. I just watched. One evening, her phone buzzed while it was sitting on the kitchen counter. I looked at it, didn't pick it up, stood there a few seconds, then walked away. I'd spent 31 years believing there were lines you didn't cross. Reading your wife's private messages was one of them. I wasn't going to become a different man just because I was afraid of what I might find. A few days later, I called Mark. We talked about 10 minutes, nothing unusual. At the end, I asked, "Everything good?" "Yeah, why?" "Just checking." He laughed. "You're getting suspicious in your old age." I laughed too. After we hung up, I sat in my truck with the engine off. Couldn't explain why that bothered me. He sounded completely normal, and somehow that made it worse. Then Karen posted another picture. She was at a coffee shop with Susan, and behind them was Mark. This time, I looked close. Karen wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at him. That night, I barely slept. Next morning, I asked her, "Are you seeing Mark?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "No." I looked at her. "Okay. You don't believe me?" "I want to." She frowned. "David, this is ridiculous." "Maybe." "You're making something out of nothing." I didn't argue, just said, "Then I don't understand why he's in all these pictures." She looked away. And that's when I knew. Not everything, but enough. 2 days later, I asked her one more question. "How many people know?" She looked confused. "Know what?" "About you and Mark." She sat down. For several seconds, neither of us said anything. Then she rubbed her forehead. "Susan knew." That one hurt. "Who else?" "I don't know." "Karen." "Mike probably knew." "Probably?" "I don't know, David." I pulled out a chair and sat down. "How long?" She stared at the table. "Almost a year." Almost a year. I thought about birthdays, family dinners, barbecues. All the times Mark had stood in my garage and asked how things were going. I'd answered him honest. He already knew. Karen said she hadn't planned for it to happen, said she'd been unhappy, said Mark made her feel noticed, said our marriage had become more like a partnership. I didn't tell her she was wrong. Maybe some of that was true. Maybe I'd been too comfortable. Maybe I'd quit paying attention. But none of that explained the lying, and it didn't explain the people around us who apparently knew. I spent the next few days thinking about that. Then I noticed something on our family tablet, a bank alert. There'd been a transfer from our savings account. Wasn't enough to make us panic, but I knew I hadn't made it. When I asked Karen about it, she said it was for a home expense. I checked the account later. The amount didn't match what she'd told me. That bothered me more than the money itself. A few days after that, I found an email from a financial advisor. Karen had apparently made an appointment. I asked her about it. She said she was just looking into our retirement options. That sounded reasonable. We were 60. We should have been talking about retirement. But then I noticed something else. She'd been looking at rental properties in another town. Not one or two, several. I stood in the kitchen with my laptop open and read through the search history. Didn't feel angry at first. I felt tired. 'Cause suddenly, the affair wasn't the only thing happening. Karen was thinking about what came next. I started looking through our financial records. Not secretly for weeks, just careful. the way I should have been looking at him all along. She'd requested copies of some documents. She'd asked questions about our savings. One account had a different mailing address listed for correspondence. Nothing was gone. Nothing was hidden in some secret account. But she was clearly getting ready for a life that didn't include me. Then I found a message from Mark. It was short. "He trusts you. Just don't rush this." I read it twice. Then I put the phone down. That sentence got to me more than I expected. 'Cause Mark knew me. He knew I hated confrontation. He knew I trusted people once they'd earned it. He knew I'd talked to him about my marriage, and he'd taken things I'd told him as a friend and used that against me to help my wife plan what came next. The affair had been going on almost a year. The financial planning had been going on for months. Karen and Mark had apparently talked about where she might live and how to explain the separation to our kids. They weren't just having an affair, they were making plans. Without me. I wanted to confront him both. Thought about calling Mark and telling him exactly what I thought. Thought about sending screenshots to everybody we knew. Instead, I called an attorney. Not because I knew I wanted a divorce. I didn't. Just needed to know where I stood. I gathered our financial records, made copies of important documents, talked to the bank, looked at the house, the retirement accounts, the savings. First time in years, I paid attention to everything. A few days later, Karen came into the kitchen. "We need to talk." I was sitting at the table. There was a folder in front of me. She sat down. "What is that?" I looked at her. "I know about Mark." She froze. I let the silence sit there. Then I said, "And I know you've been moving money around." Her face changed. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was." She started crying. "I didn't want to hurt you." "You did." "I was going to tell you." "When?" She didn't answer. I pushed the folder aside. "If you want to leave, I'm not gonna stop you." She looked at me. "But we're gonna handle it honestly." That was the first time in months I felt like I was making a decision instead of reacting to one. The divorce took months. Wasn't some dramatic courtroom scene. Mostly paperwork, meetings, numbers, boxes, uncomfortable conversations. The financial questions made everything more complicated, but eventually we worked through them. Mark stopped calling. Eventually, my attorney had contact with him over some of the financial issues, and Mark kept his distance. The plans Karen had made quiet became a lot more complicated once everything had to be discussed out in the open. Our kids eventually found out. I didn't give them every detail. I told them, "Your mother and I couldn't rebuild the trust." My daughter asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "Not yet." That was the truth. I moved into a smaller house, 2 bedrooms, small garage, nothing special, but it was mine. The first few weeks were strange. I'd make too much coffee, reach for my phone during dinner, walk into the living room expecting to hear the television. Then, one Saturday, I decided to fix the old pickup I'd been ignoring for years. Been sitting in the garage with a dead battery and 2 flat tires. My son came over, looked at the truck. "You're actually fixing this?" "That's the plan." "You've been saying that for 10 years. I looked at him. "Well, I'm running out of excuses." He laughed. We worked on it till dark. A few weeks later, the engine finally turned over. Wasn't perfect. Radio didn't work. Driver's window stuck halfway down. But it ran. I drove it to a diner outside town one Sunday morning. Parked by the window. ordered eggs and coffee. Nobody was waiting for me. Nobody was checking where I'd been. I sat there, watching trucks pass on the highway. I still thought about Karen. 31 years doesn't disappear 'cause a marriage ends. But I stopped thinking about Mark. Stopped wondering who knew. Stopped trying to understand why people who called themselves friends had stayed quiet. I realized I might never get every answer, and I didn't need them anymore. A few months later, I ran into Mark at a hardware store. He saw me first. "David!" I turned around. He stood there holding a box of screws. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he said, "I'm sorry." I looked at him, thought about that garage, the coffee, all the things I'd told him. Then I said, "I know," and I walked away. That evening, I parked the old pickup in my driveway. My phone rang. It was my son. "Dad, you coming Sunday?" I looked at the house. "Yeah." "Good, we're grilling." "All right." I shut the truck off. For a long time, I'd wondered how many people knew the truth before I did. Eventually, I stopped counting. I had a life to get back to.